Somewhere in your house right now, there's a drawer. And in that drawer, underneath the takeout menus and the dead batteries, there's a small plastic toothbrush. Maybe one of those little rubber finger caps. It came free in a goodie bag from the clinic, and you brought it home, fully intending to use it, and then life happened, and it has been sitting in the dark ever since. Every few months you open that drawer, looking for something else, see it, feel a small stab of guilt, and close the drawer again. If that is you, I want to say something before we go one sentence further. You are not a bad cat owner. You are the overwhelming majority. Hi everyone, I'm Leo Bennett, your neighborhood cat guy. Today we're talking about the most guilt-inducing subject in all of cat care, and that's your cat's teeth. What actually matters, what's a myth, how to do it properly if you're going to do it, and what to do instead if you're honest enough to admit that you never will. Because here's what almost nobody says out loud. The advice most owners get on this subject is technically perfect and practically impossible. And advice you can't follow isn't really advice at all. It's guilt with instructions attached. And the last thing on this list is the one that actually keeps my own cat's mouths healthy. And I'll tell you now, it isn't a toothbrush. Hit subscribe. And let's start with why any of this matters in the first place. First, why this isn't cosmetic. Because a lot of people quietly file cat dental care somewhere near nice to have, next to a fancier bed. It is not. Dental disease is one of the most common health problems in cats, and here's what makes it genuinely dangerous rather than just unfortunate. It is almost completely invisible from where you are sitting. Here's what's actually happening in there. Plaque, a soft film of bacteria, builds up on the tooth surface. Within a couple of days, it starts to harden into tartar, that yellow-brown cement you can sometimes see if you lift a lip. It works its way under the gum line, where the gums become inflamed, red, and sore. Left long enough, it reaches the structures holding the tooth in place. And that is painful. Not mildly uncomfortable, but painful, in the way a bad toothache is painful for you. Except it doesn't go away, and nobody is going to do anything about it. And your cat will tell you absolutely nothing. Cats hide pain because in the wild, an animal that looks weak is an animal that gets picked off by something bigger. And that instinct doesn't switch off because there's a radiator and a food bowl. So your cat keeps eating, keeps purring, keeps climbing into your lap at night, with a mouth that hurts every single day. I've had owners tell me their cat just got grumpy in old age, that she stopped wanting to be touched around the head, that he started eating on one side or dropping food or approaching the bowl, thinking about it, and walking away. That is very often not personality, and it isn't age. It's a mouth. And it goes further than sore gums, because there are conditions like tooth resorption, where the tooth breaks down from the inside out, and stomatitis, a severe inflammation of the mouth tissue. Those are on an entirely different level. So the stakes are real, and I'm not going to soften them. What I am going to do is be honest about what you can actually sustain. Now let me clear up the myth that lets most owners off the hook, because I hear it constantly, and it is flatly, completely false. Dry food does not clean your cat's teeth. This idea is everywhere. The crunching, the abrasion, the scraping. It sounds mechanically sensible, so people repeat it at the pet store and to each other, and an enormous number of owners genuinely believe that feeding kibble counts as dental care. It doesn't. Cats do not chew the way we do. A cat's jaw doesn't move side to side to grind. It moves in a shearing, vertical, scissor-like motion designed to slice meat off a carcass. Most cats barely chew kibble at all. They crack it once and swallow the pieces. And even when a tooth does make real contact, standard kibble shatters rather than scrapes. It also makes almost no contact with the part that actually matters, which is right down at the gum line, where disease starts and where it does its damage. The tip of the tooth was never the problem, so the correct way here is simply to stop counting it. Feed whatever diet you and your vet have settled on, because I'm not telling you to change food. Just take dry food off your dental checklist because it was never on it. And if you've been telling yourself for years that the teeth are fine because she eats kibble, that's the belief I need you to drop today. That single myth has cost a lot of cats a lot of unnecessary comfort. So let's talk about brushing itself, because if you're going to do it, there is a right way to go about it, and there is a fast way to ruin it permanently. And rule number 1 comes first, because getting this wrong isn't just ineffective, it's genuinely dangerous. Never, ever use human toothpaste. Not a smear, not once. Not just this time because it's what I had. Human toothpaste contains ingredients never meant to be swallowed, and your cat has no concept of spitting. Everything you put in that mouth is going down. Some human toothpastes also contain sweeteners that are outright toxic to pets. So you use a toothpaste made specifically for cats. Full stop, no exceptions. The good news is that they're cheap, widely available, and usually flavored like poultry or fish, which means for a lot of cats, the paste itself becomes the treat rather than the obstacle. Now, the technique. And this is where almost everybody rushes and pays for it later. You do not start with a toothbrush. You start weeks earlier with nothing in your hand. The approach is the same one that works for nail trims. You desensitize first, and you go slower than feels necessary. Begin by simply touching your cat's face while you're already hanging out, with no agenda and no equipment. Rub their cheeks, which most cats adore anyway. You've probably noticed that when a cat rubs against your hand, they often push right up into the corner of their own mouth. Go there. Let your fingers around the muzzle and lips become an ordinary, unremarkable part of being petted. Then, and only then, a fingertip of cat toothpaste, just letting them lick it off so the taste becomes something they look forward to. Then, a finger with paste run along the outside of the gums for 2 seconds. Then 5. Then a finger brush. Then, eventually, a proper brush. Focus on the outer surfaces along the gum line because that's where disease begins, and you don't need to fight your way around to the inside of the teeth. Slow, boring, unhurried, spread over weeks. And understand this because it's the whole game. If you ever push past the point where your cat is comfortable, you don't just lose that session. You lose every future session because now a hand coming toward the face means something bad is about to happen. And that brings me to the honest part of this video, the part I suspect you actually clicked for. Is daily brushing realistic? Let me give you the truth in 2 halves because both halves are true and most people only ever get told one of them. Half 1. Daily brushing is the gold standard. That's not marketing. It's simply how plaque works. It begins forming within a day or 2, so the more often you disrupt it, the better the outcome. Anybody who tells you brushing doesn't help is wrong. Half 2. Most people are never actually going to do it. And I don't mean lazy or careless people. I mean people who love their cats enormously. Because most of us didn't adopt our cats as kittens, and kittenhood is when this is easy to establish. Because plenty of us have more than 1 cat, and 3 cats times every single evening isn't a commitment, it's a fantasy. And because there's a hidden cost hardly anybody factors in. Every interaction you have teaches your cat what your hands mean. If your hand coming toward their face reliably means a struggle, they learn that fast, and they don't compartmentalize it. The flinch doesn't stay confined to toothbrushing time. It starts showing up when you reach out to stroke their head on the couch. That's a real price, paid in the currency of your entire relationship. So the correct way isn't the answer people want, but it's the one that works. Aim for the best version you'll actually sustain. If you can do it every day, wonderful, do it every day. But if the real choice is between daily brushing that turns into a wrestling match and quietly lapses after 9 days, versus once a week that stays pleasant and lasts for years, take the once a week. Once a week beats perfect in theory and never in practice. And once a fortnight is still meaningfully better than 0. Frequency matters. So does the plan surviving contact with your actual life. So what do you do in between, or instead? Because this is where a lot of owners give up entirely, and they shouldn't, because there's a middle ground nobody talks about. First, dental gels. You apply them to the gums to help break down plaque without the full brushing routine. Not equivalent to mechanical brushing, but dramatically better than nothing and a fraction of the negotiation. Second, veterinary dental diets and dental treats. These are kibbles engineered with a texture and fiber structure that makes the tooth sink into the piece rather than shattering it. Precisely the opposite of what ordinary dry food does. This is the one place food genuinely does something. Look for products carrying the Veterinary Oral Health Council seal, because that means it was actually tested and shown to reduce plaque or tartar, rather than just having the word dental printed on the bag by a marketing department. Third, water additives, the lowest effort option available. You add them to the drinking water and that's it. Weakest tool on the list, and I won't pretend otherwise, but also the one you physically cannot forget. And here's my point about all three. None is as good as brushing, not one. They are supplements, not replacements, and anyone selling them to you as a total substitute is overselling. But the owner who runs a gel 3 times a week and uses a properly tested dental treat is doing far more than the owner who bought a toothbrush, felt guilty, and did nothing for 6 years. The perfect plan you abandon always loses to the decent plan you keep. Now, there's one more option in this space, and I want to handle it carefully, because it gets recommended a lot online and it is genuinely contested. Raw bones. The logic comes straight from nature. In the wild, cats keep their teeth clean by eating prey, and the work of tearing meat and cartilage off bone scrapes the tooth surfaces in a way nothing in a bag ever will. Some people offer appropriately sized raw bones for exactly this reason. If you do, there are non-negotiable rules. Never cooked bones, ever, because cooking makes bone brittle, and brittle bone splinters into sharp fragments. And never unsupervised. You sit there and watch the entire time. Now, my honest position. Plenty of vets are not comfortable with raw bones at all, and their concerns are legitimate. Fractured teeth, choking, intestinal obstruction, and bacterial contamination from handling raw product in a house with people in it. So I'm not going to tell you to go do it. If it genuinely appeals to you, it's a conversation to have with your own vet about your own cat. And it's one of those areas where reasonable, experienced people land in different places. That's not me dodging the question. That's honestly what the state of the evidence looks like right now. And now the last one, the one I told you about at the start, and the one that actually does the heavy lifting in my own house. Professional dental cleanings. Here's what I've come around to. The toothbrush in the drawer is a plan that never happens. The gels and tested products help around the edges, but the thing that actually gets a cat's mouth clean, properly and under the gum line where the disease lives, is a professional dental performed by a veterinarian. And yes, that means general anesthesia, and I know that is precisely the word that makes owners hesitate, so let's be straight about it rather than tiptoeing around it. A cat cannot be reasoned into holding still while somebody scales beneath their gum line with sharp metal instruments. It isn't possible, and it isn't fair to try. This is also why so-called anesthesia-free dentals are largely theater. They only address what's visible above the gum, which is the cosmetic part, not the part that hurts. Anesthesia is what makes it possible to examine every tooth individually, take dental x-rays, and find what's invisible from the outside. Tooth resorption frequently hides entirely below the gum line, and without x-rays, you'd never know it was there. Is anesthesia zero risk? No. Nothing in medicine is zero risk, and I won't insult you by claiming otherwise. But modern veterinary anesthesia, with preoperative blood work and monitoring throughout, is considerably safer than most owners picture, and your vet can tell you honestly whether your cat, at their age and with their history, is a good candidate. Raise it at a wellness exam. And here's the framing that changed how I think about all of it. One anesthetic event every year or two in exchange for a mouth that isn't quietly aching the other 364 days is a trade I'll make every time. So build it into your routine and stop treating it as an emergency measure. Annual wellness exams, more often once they hit their senior years, and let your vet look in that mouth and tell you when it's time. They will spot problems months or even years before you would have. So let me pull this together because I don't want anybody leaving with a fresh coat of guilt on top of the old one. Your cat's mouth matters enormously, and the pain of dental disease is real, common, and completely hidden from you by an animal built to hide it. Dry food is doing nothing for it. Brushing is the gold standard, and if you can build it in, slowly and kindly, with proper cat toothpaste and weeks of patience before you ever pick up a brush, then do it. And know that even once a week is a real win. If you can't, use the middle ground honestly. Gels, tested dental products, whatever you'll still be doing in 6 months. And underneath all of it, let a professional look in there regularly and do the deep clean no toothbrush was ever going to reach. That's a plan that works in a real house with a real cat and a real person who has a job and a limited number of hours. And here's what I'd most like you to take away. The goal was never a perfect score. The goal is a cat who lives a long life without a mouth that hurts, and who doesn't flinch when your hand comes toward their face. Those are both part of the same job, and you're allowed to weigh them against each other. Talk it through with your own vet, because they know your cat and I don't, and then go do the version of this you'll still be doing 2 years from now. So tell me in the comments, how many of you have that toothbrush sitting in a drawer right now? Be honest. I want to see the numbers because I think a lot of people believe they're the only one. Hit like, subscribe, and send this to a friend who's been quietly feeling guilty about exactly the same thing. As always, thank you for making the world a safer place for your pets.